everyone. As he mentioned, my name is Sonam Velani, and I'm Senior Advisor at the Mayor's Office. My colleagues actually call me the Department of the Future, because my job is to figure out what will New York City look like 5, 10, 20 years from now, and what are investments that we should be making so that we have this in theory. I work on a lot of different things, what should we be doing right now to ensure that 20 years from now we have an actual functional multimodal transportation system so that the subway does not break down 3 times in a row on your way to work, so that you can ride bikes and scooters and ferries and streetcars and autonomous vehicles and even maybe flying cars to get from point A to point B. And again, a lot of that is thinking about what is the groundwork and the infrastructure that we need to lay today to be able to enable that type of future. I also work on a lot of economic development initiatives. So if we think of New York, we're sort of the perfect blend of the hyphen tech economy, right? We've got fintech, health tech, retail tech, prop tech, this tech, that tech. The list goes on. But a lot of our economic development and the jobs that are actually coming online are related to our traditional industries. And our job is to sort of think about how do you infuse tech responsibly within those industries, and then how do you train our workforce to be able to participate in that, right? And our workforce, as you know, comes from sort of across the world and brings a lot of different skill sets that play into this. And then last, we're a growing city, if you haven't noticed. Your rents keep on going up, and the vacancy rate is at all-time lows at about 3%. So we're going to hit about 9 million people by 2040. And where do we fit everyone, I think, is a big question, right? And we're very, very, very focused in our office on building not only housing, but affordable housing, and making billions of dollars of investments into that sort of, again, physical infrastructure to enable this type of growth. But how does this all sort of roll up into making sure that the investments that we're making today leads to a fair and equitable future 20 years from now? And that's a little bit of what I want to talk about today. Joy Ito is one of my sort of favorite guys over at the MIT Media Lab, and he always talks about, you have to be a nowist instead of a futurist. So that's what I hope to focus on today. And instead of, again, talking about investments in our built environment, I think one of the biggest questions that faces our society is, how do we, both as government and citizens, utilize a lot of the data that is coming into our sort of work streams and make those decisions and analyze that data and sort of think about sort of the biases that we come into when we're looking at this data. So speaking of, one of my favorite blogs is iQuant New York, and that's why I sort of, used Photoshop and shifted the I love New York sign to iQuant, or I number New York. And this again gives you sort of a mix of sort of what we're working on, right? The city of New York has tons of data. 1,600 data sets are actually open now on our open data platform. If you go to opendata.nyc.gov, feel free to go and go at it, right? And that's actually local law. We are required, we are in our own sort of thinking have said we must be accountable to the public, and therefore we are going to open up this entire data stream for individuals like yourselves to use and be creative. You also have to realize that the city of New York is over 100 different agencies report up to me and my colleagues at City Hall. So how do you think about the tools and the processes that every single one of these agencies has internally, and how do you think of sort of the overall framework within which New York City government should operate? This is one of my favorites, fun fact, 1,600 pizzerias, right? And the way we figure that out is because every single New York City restaurant has to register with a whole host of entities, whether it's the health department or the small business services department. And we essentially have all these smart data geeks in our mayor's office of data analytics, and they help us look at, what is the name of each restaurant and actually analyze menus to figure out if they serve pizza. So again, fun fact. And we also have the most pizza restaurants per capita of, I believe, any city in the world. So kudos to us. But what we're really experiencing is this data tsunami. And I was doing some research the other day for one of my projects, and I came across this graphic, which is incredible and overwhelming all at the same time. And this is actually US government data, all the different data streams, whether it's internet traffic, automotive data, all sorts of things. Gosh, the information that's going through our electricity grid and all sorts of things, right? My dream would be to create something like this for New York City, but we're working on it, but not quite there yet. Internet traffic alone has reached 1.3 zettabytes. I didn't even know that was a word, but zettabytes on an annual basis. And for context, that's watching 38 million DVDs per hour, right? So think about it. It's like you're watching, Harry Meets Sally on reruns for practically your life and much more. I also learned the term Yodabyte, I want to make sure I get this right, which is literally coined after Yoda of Star Wars. And 1 yottabyte of data will fill the entire states of Delaware and Rhode Island with 1 million data centers. So again, this is just the magnanimity of what we are working with, and who in the world is going to sort of take all of this and create ethics around it and create platforms and create some sort of responsible framework of how to analyze everything that's coming through. And not only that, we're only at about, only half of the world's population is online today. We've got 4 billion more people to go in terms of what this graphic will look like, just 1 to 5 years down the line. And again, the question that faces us is, both as government and as citizens, how are we going to drive the data revolution in a safe and responsible manner? This little guy is probably, someone in our office who has to sort of take all of this data and figure out how to shift it from a stack of books to this, right? And these are big, big questions that we are trying to solve for. So my perspective is that government is sort of in an ideal position to provide policy and drive this revolution. Of course, in partnership with the private sector, with nonprofit networks, with advocacy movements, the list goes on. And the benefit, the good and bad thing about all of this is that the public sector traditionally tends to be risk averse, right? But in this situation, we actually have to take a lot of risk because we need to be able to manage all of the numbers that are coming in. We are the ones who, need to think about what are the benefits that the broader citizenry can have from all of the data that is coming through our systems, and again, how do we create a framework around that? So we launched a couple different programs actually to think about this, right? NYCx is one of my favorites. We launched this just about a year ago. And what I think is sort of a great model for true sort of public and private partnership to drive innovation. We know that there are breakthroughs in technology, right? Blockchain, AI, and machine learning, the list goes on. And all of these will significantly impact how we live, work, and play, not only in New York City, but across the world. These advances also position technology to sort of be good, right? How do you think about using these technologies to improve urban challenges, right? To improve our subway system so that you're not late for work every day, right? Manage our congestion on our streets, a whole host of things that can really be optimized using the data streams that are coming in. So NYCx actually works with communities on the ground, literally in all 5 boroughs of New York, to identify what are the urgent priorities, whether it's Brownsville or Midtown Manhattan, and how do we bring the brightest technologists in the world to come in and work with us to solve for those challenges. We invite entrepreneurs, technologists, academia, a whole host of organizations, and literally say, New York City is your petri dish, like show us what you can do. And that's actually worked very, very well over the past year. We've launched what we call these Moonshot Challenges, to borrow a term from Google. And a number of things that we're trying to think of is, how do we deploy an electric charging vehicle infrastructure across New York City? Believe it or not, the number of electric vehicles we have in New York is less than 3% of our overall car fleet, right? And the city of New York, sort of the vehicles that we have is the largest among that, right? So we as a city government have put sort of our money where our mouth is, but we need to, again, create the infrastructure for the private sector and individuals like yourselves to make those investments as well. So we invited a bunch of folks from literally all over the world. A German company actually won this challenge in helping us figure out where and how do we deploy smart charging infrastructure in our streets, and actually connect to the electricity grid, connect to the light poles, very creative ideas. The next one we had was a connectivity challenge. So raise your hand if your internet is god-awful slow. Wow, less people than I thought. Okay, well, you probably live in Manhattan or along the waterfront areas of Brooklyn and Queens, where the internet is fastest. But if you go into places like central Brooklyn, there are actually no fiber cables that run under those streets. And you think about sort of the inequities in our city and what are those poorest neighborhoods. And it's a huge, huge challenge, right? And again, building that infrastructure, building those cables, those fiber cables and the conduit will cost the city of New York tons and tons of money, billions of dollars. So we went out and we said, okay, smart people around the world, help us figure this out. And we actually launched a challenge at Governor's Island, which is sort of literally an island in and of itself and does not have connectivity, and deployed sort of wireless mesh networks. Sorry about that. And a number of other tools to, again, understand what is quick, what is fast, and what will cost us the least amount of money to be able to achieve our goals of providing all New Yorkers fast and affordable internet by 2025. And then last week, or just about 2 weeks ago, we launched a cybersecurity challenge. So needless to say, this is quite an issue in New York City, and how do we work with our residents and businesses to ensure safety in our city. I'm being told to hurry up, so I will speed through. The next thing that we launched was an automated decisions task force. So again, there is a lot of data that is coming in. How do we analyze it? And how do we make sure that, to Cassie's point, that the people making decisions in government actually know what they're doing? So we worked with actually a number of different people across industry, academia, to bring them in and launch an ADS task force. We're government, so we're really good at launching task forces. But New York City is actually the first city in the country to convene a task force of this magnitude, to think about automated decision systems and actually create parameters around this stuff. Our goal is that as technology evolves and sort of literally impacts our lives and governance structures, what is it that we can do to make sure that, again, it is both safe and responsible in its deployment? For us, this is an opportunity to build a model in New York City that can be scaled to other policymakers, both across the country and across the world. And we're very, very excited, both by the sort of team that we have in play, as well as the information that we're trying to gather. Again, our guiding principles, I cannot state enough. Explainable, like simple English is a good thing to start with. I know this is not quite simple, but that's what we're aiming for. Fair, so how do you think about what are the rules that we're creating and making sure that the rules mirror the traditional rules that we have in place, right? Just because something's automated doesn't mean that it has to be completely different than what the day-to-day is today. And then, of course, equitable, particularly as we think about inherent bias, whether it's race, gender, socioeconomic conditions, the list goes on, but making sure that any tools that we create account for those biases. The key questions that we're trying to answer are, what is an algorithm, right? There are lots of sort of questions and definitions of that. What are ethics, right? And what is your moral code, per what Yoav was saying earlier? How do we leverage algorithms to advance equity rather than sort of deny equity to certain populations? And then also, there are a number of tools that we actually have out in the world, right? And again, I refer you to our open data portal. What should be the appeals process if somebody doesn't agree with us, right? What are the legal challenges in the court systems? And how do we, again, create a framework around all this? So I'm going to leave you with another fun graphic that I found. And I think, ethics at the end of the day are about your beliefs, your assumptions, and your principles. And, these values shift from time to time, but at the end of the day, we all live by a moral code, whatever that may be. And the fact of the matter is that we need to create a moral code for the technology that we're developing and deploying in society. You know, should we leave ethical decisions to government or to platforms or to, you know, Amazon and Google? I don't know what the answer to that is, but I do know that all of us sort of in this room collectively need to be thinking about these things and advocating for positions, again, for safe and responsible deployment of the new wave that's coming through. So thank you.